views expressed are not necessarily those of Salisbury University, the University System of Maryland, its regents, administration, officers, employees, or
Good evening. Welcome to Sports Night. I'm Travis Anella, joined tonight by Chris Makoviak, Kara Bodnar, Matt Forney. We got the whole gang here tonight.
Yep.
And it's CAC tournament time. Two already clinched their tournament victories. We'll talk about them later. We're going to start off with men's lacrosse tonight. They have their conference championship game on Saturday. That game starts at 3:30 against York. Men's lacrosse, they're good.
That's a point blunt way to put it. They are.
Yeah,
good.
they are good. They won, so they're playing York. Earlier in the regular season, their matchup, they won 17-5 against York, who was then ranked, what was it, like 7th?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're ranked 12th. Big drop off.
Yeah.
So in that game, Salisbury went on a 9-0 run when it was tied 1-1. Do you guys, what do you guys see happening on Saturday? You think Salisbury's going to, crack under pressure, or are they going to?
I think they're going to dominate. I remember I was going to watch that game. I talked to Ricky Pollitt, and the next second I put it on. It was the third quarter, 7-1. I turned it off because they were going to beat York. But I think that's going to be the same scenario. This past Saturday, I got to announce the game, and it was shaky the first half, but they fixed things. And what this team does so well is adapt. So even if York puts together a great game plan, I can see Salisbury overcoming it, fixing things, and moving on.
And you mentioned the halftime adjustments. You look at the Cabrini game where they were tied going into halftime. They go out on that run in the third quarter, and the same thing with Frostburg State the other day, where they just make adjustments and their defense buckles down that second half, and that's what's going to help them win possibly the national championship this year, is those in-game adjustments that Berkman does so well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think like the boys this year at half, if they're like shaken up by something, they've been able to do those adjustments. I mean, the third quarter they were outscoring them 3-1. Fourth, this past time with Frostburg, it was 6-0 with outscoring. So they definitely know how to pick it up and just get through the defense if it's giving them an offensive issue.
Yeah, you mentioned how they're able to adapt. Against their last two games against Cabrini and Frostburg. Against Cabrini, they were losing 6-4. They go on a 9-0 run, make it 13-6. Against Frostburg, they were losing 5-3. They finished the game on an 11-1 run and win 14-6. They went in the face of adversity. The few times that they've had it this year, they've been able to adapt, like you said, and really pull through. You mentioned, we saw it in the beginning of the season against Lynchburg when they had the 6-0 fourth quarter. They were down 3 goals 3 times in that game. So they've been showing it all season that they know how to adapt to pressure and come back and win games.
Yeah, you look at what Matt said, Cabrini. Also, Christopher Newport on the road in Newport News, down or up 3-2, really close first quarter. Another game right there that was a tough grinder in the CAC.
And just to go forward, and it also helps with the defense with Colin Raymond and then Joshua Dean that have experience in net. So if one of them is off to a shaky start, they have, if they need to replace a goalie, they have somebody to step up and you don't miss a beat because they both have performed so well this year.
Yeah, to go for that, like with the experience, like all the boys that they have this year, they all have the experience. They know what they want to get. They want to get that national ring back. And like they've shown throughout the entire season, they know how to adapt. They know how to adjust. They know how to go about different situations. So I definitely think going forward, like, they're going to have a great rest of the season.
Yeah, they're going for their 20th CAC championship on Saturday. The CAC awards were announced today for most of the sports. And first team All-CAC for men's lacrosse, Thomas Cirillo, James Burton, Preston Dabbs, Nathan Blondino, Andrew Turnahan, Kyle Tucker, Will Nowesnick. That's about half of the first team right there. And not to mention Davis Anderson, Carson Kalama, Aaron Leeds, and Duncan Campbell getting second team. So that's pretty much their entire starting lineup. Right? Thomas Cirillo didn't even start a lot of the games down towards the end of the season. But pretty much half of their entire starting lineup, first and second team, all CAC. What does that say about how dominant they've been this year?
It speaks for itself. The stats and the fact that they haven't lost the game and they have, for the first time since 2012, ironically enough, the last time they won the national championship, somebody has over 40 assists, which is James Burton. They just are firing on all cylinders and playing defense really well. And they have the biggest point differential in NCAA right now, I think.
Yeah, definitely they do. At a 10.89 scoring margin, they're third in the NCAA in goals per game, eighth in goals allowed. And you mentioned it's the first time since 2012 that they've had, coincidentally, a 40-plus assist player. It's also the first time since 2012 that Jim Berkman has been named CAC Coach of the Year, and he was this year. And then also Thomas Cirillo named Player of the Year in the CAC. I don't think that they're going to be tested at all by York on Saturday, even though they are ranked 12th in the country. I think they're just going to go out there, play the way that they've been playing all year, and easily bring home their 20th CAC championship. Wouldn't you guys agree?
Yeah,
I
well,
100% agree with that.
Yeah, and just to go off that last game against York, they didn't do so well in the face-off game where I think it was 6. We only won 6 and they won 20, so we were 6 for 26 in the face-off. So, and we still won by 12 last meeting. So, look for that to change, but the outcome to remain the same.
and that's the one struggle towards the end of the season here. Duncan Campbell winning faceoffs. That's been a struggle. Second half against Frostburg State, they got a lot done.
Yeah, so now we're going to switch over to women's lacrosse. They also play their CAC championship game on Saturday. They play first at 12 o'clock against St. Mary's. Now, against St. Mary's in the regular season, also a road game for the Seagulls. They won 10-3. Gianna Falcone had 9 saves in that game. You look at this women's lacrosse team, and nobody really stands out in the NCAA stats. They're 70th in goals per game. They're 5th in goals allowed. But other than that, like their stats don't really stand out like the men's team does.
And I gotta say, part of that is CAC and men's lacrosse is pretty strong, even though Salisbury's obviously leagues ahead. But women's lacrosse is not as strong, and they've just been winning games that makes them look good. And they've lost road contests or even to Gettysburg at home, tight margin against good teams. It makes them look good. But against York, I was worried. I was announcing that game after the first half, troubled there. Jim Nestor, the head coach, kept going with the same system process that he does each game, the wave attack offense, but York just clogged in front of the crease. They couldn't get any goals, and York, if you allow the opposing team, if you're Salisbury, the opposing team gets a ton of possession, it's just trouble. And teams will look at York's game plan, and it's going to be problems for Salisbury down the line, especially in the NCAA tournament, because they saw what York did, and if they copy that, they're going to win against Salisbury.
Yeah, and that's like, excuse me. Their 2 losses this year came to Gettysburg, who right now is ranked 5th, and TCNJ, who's right now ranked 2nd, Salisbury ranked 3rd. 2 losses on the year, yeah, that's good. Both to top 5 teams, both to possible opponents in the tournament come the Final Four national championship. How far do you really think they can go in the NCAA tournament?
I think it just depends on, like Chris said, who takes the York game plan and applies it to their scheme to play Salisbury. And if you can shut down their offense and maintain possession of the ball, because there's no shot clock in women's lacrosse, so they can hold the ball for 30 minutes at a time if they choose to. So it's just a matter of how much you want to make Salisbury play your game. If you want to go into the hands of, oh, we can play their game, you're going to lose. So it depends on who makes the adjustments that York did in that first half and go with that.
Yeah, if Salisbury's able to learn from the York game and know how to go and work effectively against that defense, then there is promise for them in the NCAA tournament, like going against those different things and adapting. However, if other teams do take York's game plan, it definitely shows that Salisbury has the issue dealing with that. So.
Yeah, when you look at Salisbury's roster with the stats, they have a lot of players who can get assists. They really like to pass the ball around. Look at Megan Wallenhorst. She has 23 goals, 34 assists. And then Kristen Murphy, 26, Dana King, 21. They have a lot of goal scorers, but they also have a lot of passers, which I think is going to help in their advantage. And when you mention how York kind of knew what strategy they wanted to play, and it was a close game. Well, it was a close game when they played in the regular season too. I believe that was a 1-goal win for Salisbury in the regular season. So York knows how to play against Salisbury. So does TCNJ. They beat Salisbury last year. Gettysburg, I believe, I don't know if they played last year, but Gettysburg is always a top team in both men's and women's lacrosse. So I think, and it's not who's going to take York's strategy, it's if a team is going to think about that. So now over on to baseball and softball, teams that already won their conference championship. We're going to start with baseball first. All year here on Sports Night, we've been making fun of baseball's pitching. I'm not gonna lie. We've been talking about how bad their pitching is.
The pitching has been a struggle.
How
it has
did
been.
how did they win the CAC championship?
Well, it wasn't pitching. I'm just gonna say that. But
I mean, it was in a way you have to give them credit for pitching because they could have had a game where against Marymount earlier this year where they allowed 23 runs. So pitching buckled down when it had to. Yes, it was around that 6-7 run ERA that we're accustomed to seeing all year, but it was also timely outs, timely hitting, and just getting the job done, taking advantage of extra outs or errors that allowed them to score the winning runs.
Yeah, I would definitely say to like take advantage of when to hit and like how everything was placed with the outs and the count with the errors. I mean, in the last game, they scored the winning run with the error against Frostburg. And then with Goodwin having his home runs throughout the Frostburg game, it just seemed that offensively, with the pitching buckling down when it had to, that it just clicked and worked, and it was good for them. So hopefully that keeps up.
Yeah, their pitching actually did have a little bit to do with it. It was one of the Marymount games. Connor Shockley came in, pitched the final 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning, left the bases loaded for Marymount, and that won them the game in a 1-run game. Just looking in the championship game, Grasso and Scheidemann combined 5 innings, 4 innings, and really they didn't shut down Frostburg State. They gave up 8 runs, but they scored 9. I think it was a combination of the pitching actually coming up in a situation that they needed and the hitting staying that they were. Now, coming off of that, and they have a couple of regular season games after the tournament, but the regionals don't start until May 18th. Quickly, do you think, does their performance in the CAC tournament change how far you think they can go in the regionals?
I wouldn't say they're getting to the College World Series. I think they can get a few wins in the regionals, but not go too deep, not like last year for sure. But the pitching has definitely improved. Certain players like Ryan Dice, Connor Reeves, who started off the game very well but had to leave for an injury. Players that will be back next year are doing better.
Yeah, next year I definitely think our pitching is going to be so much stronger. So I think they will do well if the pitching keeps staying steady. But next year will definitely be a big year for them.
I think just like you guys mentioned, the players getting experience now, and I think we're going to be ranked lower, so expectations aren't going to be that high as we were a top 5 team going into the season. So I think that's going to play into a factor and might put a chip on their shoulder. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think they might be able to get a win or 2 in the regionals. We'll have to see. That's not for another 3 weeks. Now on to softball, a team that has just been absolutely dominant this year. They won their CAC tournament this past weekend. They were the host, beat Mary Washington 6-0, beat Christopher Newport 7-3, beat Christopher Newport again 2-1. In the entire tournament, Anna Brittingham, 18 innings pitched, only 9 hits allowed, 21 strikeouts. As a team, they have a 1.39 ERA. Do you think it's national championship or bust for the Salisbury team this year?
I think that's the way the seniors have got to come into this because they've been so close 2 years ago. They were literally bases loaded and 1 run away from beating Tufts and couldn't get it done. And they had the trophy in their hands, just they couldn't grasp it. So I think their mentality is they got to this year, and the way that their offense has been carrying them, if their pitching can keep them at that 1 run a game, I think you mentioned on Twitter, they're the dark horse to win it this year as a favorite, a top 5 team.
Yeah, I wrote a recap for the Flyer after their doubleheader win against Mary Washington, and I talked to Katie Sabane, and she was really adamant on how the team turned around after that 2-3 start the season. They turned it around and got things going, and they're building off of that, kind of that dark horse. They're still number 2 in the nation, but they're arguably the best right now and building right now.
Definitely, for sure. I think the girls this year, they want to get that national championship. They want to get there. Margie Knight and the girls and the coaching staff, you hear them talking about all the time how they are determined to make sure that they get there, they get their name heard. They don't care if they're the underdog. They don't care if they're the ones projected to win. They want that ring. That's their goal. So I definitely think if everything keeps going the way it is, that they're going to get there. There's no one stopping them.
Yeah, you mentioned the 2-3 start. Since that 2-3 start, they've won 32 of 33, including 17 in a row. You mentioned earlier with the men's lacrosse team how they had half of the first team. The CSC all conference teams came out today for softball. Anna Brittingham, Kim Dorsey, Katie Sabane, Paige Knusman, Caitlin Lake, Molly Simpson, first team all CAC, Leanne Collins, second team, Molly Simpson, player of the year, Brooke Mizell, rookie of the year, Margie Knight, coach of the year. So they're not under the radar if you look at the all conference rankings and every single name on the list is Salisbury.
Yep.
So I think they're gonna just blow past. They're gonna be home for the regionals and super regionals, where they've just been dominant all year. They're gonna go to the College World Series, and I think they're gonna meet up with Texas Tyler in the National Championship Series, and you never know from there. But that's all the time that we have this week for Sports Night. Kara Bodnar, Matt Forney, and Chris Makoviak. That's it. Have a great weekend, everybody, and let's go Seagulls.